Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Dosson. I'm the National Shelter Outreach Manager for Best Friends Animal Society. And today we're going to talk on community engagement-based animal control programs. All right, let's get going. All right, a little bit about myself. I spend a lot of time in municipal sheltering. I started back in Richmond's Animal Care and Control in Virginia as a caregiver, and it was a smaller shelter, and we did everything besides field services, everything from cleaning to adoptions to vetting, customer service, all of the above. And that's really where I learned that's where my curiosity for animal control came about, because that was the only field in animal sheltering that I was not privy to. I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved to Austin, Texas in 2008. Animal control officer position opened up. They're now called animal protection officers, but at the time, animal control, and I jumped on the chance to go over there and move to Texas and see what Austin was up to as far as progress in their shelter. And it's important to know that when I did move to Austin in 2008, it really wasn't this bright, shiny, no-kill, municipal facility. There were a lot of animals that were not leaving the shelter alive. At the time, 2008, it was about 55% of cats and 35% of dogs. They were not leaving alive. So that was a large amount of animals, considering that the shelter was had about, at the time, a 20,000 animal intake. So I was working there for a couple years, and the Austin City Council came up with a no-kill implementation plan in 2010, and which had about 34 recommendations, none of which included how animal control could support the shelter's success in becoming no-kill. I should really see not the shelter becoming no-kill, but the community to become no-kill. We had some really great animal control leadership, and they really came up with some innovative ideas on how to implement animal control into that implementation plan. That was lucky for us, because really, animal shelters and animal control, they should be working towards a common mission and a common goal. And we were based out of the shelter, and there was no reason for us not to be involved. So it took about 3 years for Austin to become no-kill. So in March of 2011, we managed a 90% or higher live outcome. So, and our intake had dropped in those 3 years to about 17,000 animals annually. And it's still animal control faces significant barriers, such as, not enough staffing. For example, in 2018, ACOs in Austin fielded 26,000 calls with an additional 20,000 follow-ups on their sequences on that. So they're really busy out there. They do have 16 officers, but that's not all in the field. They have one program manager, a couple of supervisors, couple of dispatchers, and I think that leaves about 10 or 11 officers if they're fully staffed. And that's serving a population of about 2 million people and just over 1,000 square miles. So they are working every single day, just much like all of you guys are. One thing I hear quite often when we're working on these shelter and field assessments across the country is that we're understaffed and we don't have the resources. And then when we really get down to it, analyzing, and we'll go into this a little bit more, we get down to it, we analyze like what are you utilizing your workforce for, and we get down even to the nitty-gritty, such as like looking at a call, what is a response and how do you respond, and just kind of helping agencies streamline their processes and be able to respond or use their fairly often limited resources in the best possible way to maximize impact. Okay, so now I am with Best Friends, no longer with Municipal, and I started off as a Great Plains regional specialist, really working in the 7 Great Plains states in the middle of the country. And about 6 months ago, I moved to this position, National Shelter Outreach Manager, and that's my team at the bottom there. We're awesome. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? And it's important for me to say this here is that I don't know exactly what you are doing in your agency and how your department handles your calls. And if you are doing any of this, that's fabulous. And if you pick up some new ideas, that's wonderful. But this is not this presentation isn't to call out anybody or any particular agency for not doing something or doing something. It's just we believe that when we are working together, we're going to achieve more, and this is sharing knowledge. So, all right, so we're covering today is community engagement and how to do it, public perception of animal control, which is a big one, life-saving program examples. So we'll go over like who did what, where, and how did it work. And of course, along with that, success stories and then some resources for you. I just added this slide. I really like this quote. It should really be the most dangerous phrase in this language because we're speaking English, but progress. The phrase that we've always done it this way, it's just the way we've done it. I don't know, that's how I was trained. That's a really problematic phrase in our industry because it's very dangerous. Just because we've always done things a particular way doesn't mean that it's the right way. And we really need to be flexible and willing to change and try something new and move on. It's just being proactive. Okay, so this is really cool. I like to go over these slides in most of my presentations just so that we can understand why we're doing what we're doing and where we're doing it. And I picked, this is the national data, and I put our community dashboard. That's the website for it up at the top there. So if you haven't been, you should go check it out. It gets really granular and we'll go through the slides real quick. So this just gives you a general overview of like where the animals are dying. And these are the top states with the largest life-saving gaps that are highlighted, and you can read the numbers there. But ever since the beginning of animal services, we've really been running on emotionally charged and reactive mindsets. It's really important to recognize those emotions within this movement, but it's also critical that we work off of data. And if you don't have data, you don't know where to go or how to maximize your resources, right? So Best Friends launched this tool, the community dashboard, this summer at our national conference. It went live that week. And it's absolutely not created to be used as a weapon against any agencies or shelters or anybody in particular, any communities. It's just to identify where the most animals are dying. It is so that we can maximize resources and actually do targeted impacts in certain areas, right? We recognize that this movement is a community-driven movement, and shelters are not the bad guys here. So we often see it on social media that there are like many very loud squeaky wheels out there, and unfortunately, those emotions they're charged with a lot of misinformation, right? So this data doesn't lie, and it just puts everything out there for everybody to go and see, like, how's my community doing? And it's transparency, and transparency is going to save more lives, right? So for the first time ever, we're shining a light on exactly where we need to be putting the most life-saving resources, which is really exciting. And the information on the dashboard is just an opportunity to develop a better understanding of what's happening in different communities and highlight opportunities for individuals to get involved and help save more animals, right? So this is the national data set, and we're going to go a little bit granular. We have different regions in at Best Friends, and I live in the South Central region, so this is not a dig. I just happen to pick it because I live here. And so you can go in and you can see how your region is doing and what states are in your region. And we'll move on here. And you can actually pick your state. I live in Texas, so I picked Texas, and it gets really granular. You can actually look down into your community, into your county, and then see which communities are no kill or not no kill, or who needs help and how to go about doing it. Okay, there's an entire bank of knowledge on that community dashboard, and I really encourage you to go check it out. Okay, so community engagement, back to the actual topic. So as officers, we have to talk to the public, right? We don't get to put up walls. We are stewards of public dollars. we need to be engaged with our community, right? They need to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. It's integral to saving more lives, right? And that's what we're here for. We're not here to, as officers, to go out there and impound animals and take them back to the shelter. Like, we really need to become community resources and liaisons between our community and our organizations, right? We are out there talking to people every day, and we're the ones that people are seeing. So we might as well engage with them in a really positive way that's driven with resources and information for them. Okay. And it's really hard as an officer. Sometimes we do see a lot of we do some of the worst things, worst sides of people and animals, but it's really important that we know that we don't view the public with that clouded vision. That small percentage that we're seeing, and sometimes we're seeing it daily, I do recognize that, but that small percentage doesn't represent everybody. Like, and if we're not out there talking to people with open minds and open hearts and figuring out what they need from us, then, and vice versa, really, and telling them what we need from them, they don't know how to help us. All right, so field community engagement and how to do it. Simple thing, pick what you want to do. Define your goal. What is it that you want to implement, try out, a pilot program? And I picked here, for example, return to owner in field. Directly reduces shelter intake, and it engages with your community. And you guys can read along here while I ramble on. So when I first started in Austin, there's no transparency and therefore no support from the community. We weren't telling them what was going on. We weren't telling them what we needed. So they pretty much told themselves their own story, right? They weren't supporting us because it was all based on misinformation. And not all of it, I should say, but it was based largely on misinformation. But we really weren't being transparent. Whether it was being transparent was more scary to us, or that, we had the old mindset of like, this is how we do things. We just put your head down and you clear the call. You just get the call done. It's public service. We're here for public safety. Just go ahead, and somebody doesn't want their animal, you just take their animal, bring it in. And that's really not the way modern sheltering and animal services is right now. So if you think about it, animal sheltering as we know it for like the last century or so, we've really conditioned the public to bring in their animals, bring in stray animals, right? And really not look beyond the shelter as a resolution for having an unwanted or stray animal. So the history and beginnings of animal sheltering itself was in part created to placate the public's disapproval of animal control. And I have air quotes going on. I know you can't see me, but animal control back then really was the very definition of a dog catcher. They were paid by the nose. They were taking people's dogs, and really it was a trap or catch and kill method. That was their means of animal control. And so the public did not like seeing these mass executions, mass killings of animals. So we created shelters that essentially evolved into doing the same thing, but beyond closed doors. So taking in animals and doing it in the dark, basically. So the public didn't have to see it. So we definitely need to retrain our public so that they don't look as the shelter as the first step to help rehoming their animal, but really as the last step. But along with that comes resources, right? And so going back to talking about return to field, to owner in field, if you're not talking to your public, they don't know what you do and they don't know how to help you, right? And along with implementing a new program, have a plan. Do you have the supplies? Do you have microchip scanners? Do you have dispatch to call in, or do you have somebody that you can call in to look up a microchip to be able to take this animal home? Do you have a database? Like, are you keeping a database of microchips? Do you have access to whatever it is that you need to be able to get this animal back home before bringing it into the shelter? And like, are you sharing these good things that you are doing? Are you sharing your new program with the public? Like, look, hey, on social media, Officer so-and-so brought back 2 dogs that had been running loose and their owner was worried sick, et cetera, et cetera. Take pictures, talk about the good work that you're doing, and remove barriers, making it easy for people to help you. Be approachable, engage with people in a positive way. They want to help, and it's up to us to tell them how they can do it. This is an example of return to owner and field in Austin, and you can see how large of a reduction in intake and the number of animals in care that return to owner and field mitigated, right? So if you look in 2014, it was 519, and in 2017, it's 819 animals that didn't come to the shelter. I don't know how big your shelters are, but that's a significant number on any level. And quite frankly, if you're mitigating 5 animals a year, that's 5 animals less that are now in your shelter and they're at home. This program just ensures a live outcome, right? Because it doesn't even come to the shelter. It goes straight back home. It's a great public service. It provides you with an opportunity to talk to residents about the root cause, like why is your animal getting out, which may prevent future issues with their animals down the line, right? Go beyond scanning, right? You scan for a chip, maybe it has one, maybe it doesn't, but talk to the neighbors, talk to the property owners, talk to whoever's there. Once you're at that point, like ask to post found notices on the property or in the area, and work with local lost and found groups on social media. And it's always important, and I feel like I need to say this because not every agency has this, but everything that you have, or everything that you post needs to be bilingual. Make sure that you have everything in Spanish as well. All right. A quick story about the Return to Owner and Field program in Austin. I remember he has since retired, but one of my favorite officers there had been there for forever, and he was just a really amazing guy, and he had these incredible animal handling skills. And I mean, I could see him netting an animal behind his back, like he was just like, oh, there's an animal, boom, got it. I remember the supervisors looking at when we started celebrating Return to Owner and Fields, and that became down the line, it was a celebration at first for buy-in, but really making it an expectation. But when they were first looking at who was returning to owners in field, this particular officer had a bunch of unable to locate or unable to catch dispositions, or he cleared his calls with a lot of unable to catch, unable to locate. Almost all his stray calls that were there, that's how they were cleared. And we had a conversation with him, and it turned out that, he's grown up here. He had been in the community for 50 years, and he knew everybody where he worked. And of course he could catch animals, and of course he knew where they lived anyway. And it turns out like he was actually returning them to the owners on the sly, like in the dark, thinking that he was meant to capture the animal, impound it, or issue a citation. And once we really explained again that was not the way things were going to be anymore, it was a new measure of success, he was like, oh yeah, well, I've been giving dogs back for years. So I thought that was a really cool story, where I was like, when you look at your data and how officers are clearing calls, like no way are you not able to catch animals when you have skills like he had. But he just didn't know. And it proves that people want to engage with their community. Officers want to be out there. They want to have good relationships with their community. And this is a great way to establish those. Return to owner and field. Okay, so we all know these images, right? The old villainous depictions, like the one in Lady and the Tramp, or to the punitive sounding dog pound, all of those words, we need to change those views. It's not what animal control is anymore. But the concept of dog catcher has been historically antagonistic, right? But as a profession, we need to embrace community engagement as a philosophy. Society is more engaged now than ever before. You know, we have social media. Really, it's a great conduit for engagement, and we should really harness that energy and social progress and to use it in our profession to let them know what we do and how people can help us. This is animal control today, right? Oh, animal protection. You know, in Austin, we changed it from animal control officer to animal protection officer. It was a positive spin and more reflective on the work that we did. Today's animal care and control services, they're redefining relationships to residents and embracing principles that promote safe, humane communities for people and pets. Control the narrative around your department, right? Tell people what you're doing, put these out, and there are more examples in the rest of this presentation, but you know, these are all pictures that were posted on social media, and the responses from the community were overwhelming. Okay, so we as animal control officers, this is an honorable profession, right? We are all representatives of animal services and our shelters out in the public, right? We are community resources. We are liaisons to our communities, and our communities are animal lovers. They want to help animals, right? As a nation, we value transparency and innovation, right? And all those things that are listed there, right? American communities all over are embracing the no-kill model. All right, so this is working all over. These are just, I wrote down some of the things that we did in Austin over the years that were just proactive programs that we implemented. And, you know, change is scary for some people, you know, but it's also really exciting when you see that your hard work has paid off and you see your life-saving percentages and numbers jump. And honestly, it as an officer, it let me go home every night knowing that I was doing what I thought I was going to be doing when I started as an animal control officer. I wanted to help animals, and now, you know, program by program, we were doing that. So this is working all over community engagement-based animal control programs. Other success stories, Pima in Tucson, Arizona, Atlanta, Broward County, Florida. People are trying different things. So we're looking at this list here, and the Fencing Assistance Fund, right? And that was back in 2007. I think in Austin, we got a new anti-tethering ordinance. So we realized that people were still tethering their animals because literally that's the way they always did it. But because they didn't know too, nobody told them, and they didn't figure out that they weren't allowed to. And we knew that the people did not have the resources necessary to get those animals off the tethers, and they were on the tether for a reason, right? Because they were escape artists, because of whatever was the reason. The owners were containing those animals. So we've set up a fencing assistance fund where people could get their animals spayed and neutered for free, along with vaccinations. And at the time, that was actually a requirement. In hindsight, you know, that was just a barrier to keeping animals at home, but that has since changed. So really opening up and providing fencing assistance. Like we based it off donations. We trolled Craigslist, the free section, for supplies, and we would go and drop off a dog pen or dog pen supplies to people's houses so they could build a pen around their animal and to get them off the tether. And a lot of agencies think that is going above and beyond, but really it's not. We're here to serve the community, and if your community has a certain need, it is our duty to serve them. And the animals, you know, it may not be, I hear this quite a bit, you know, it's not my responsibility. Yes, you know, that's not your responsibility, but ultimately it is our problem when those animals are surrendered to the shelter because their owners could not comply, with whatever ordinance or whatever it is, or they couldn't afford the citations. I mean, we end up with the animal, and then that person eventually down the line gets another animal. So what good does that do? And how does that engage? And when you are out there writing citations, what is the perception of your community, of your agency? I'm betting it's not very good. But anyway, moving on. Looking down these lists, some of my favorite things, the spay neuter outreach program was awesome. Just getting out there, talking to people, offering free spay neuter services. Along with that came the rabies vaccination, and we were able to offer transportation. Of course, the community cat program, cats around the country are the low-hanging fruit of the shelters. You know, those cats that are entering shelters that aren't suitable for adoption programs. We just put them back. We spayed and neutered, we returned them to the field. Okay, zip code reload, we will talk about that in a minute. That's coming up. And of course, we're lucky in Texas that microchipping is not considered a veterinary practice. So the officers in Austin actually can microchip in the field. So they, on any call, you know, they're talking to someone, you already have the owner there, you're chatting to them, you get all the information. Oh, your dog doesn't have a microchip? Well, let me do that. If you want, I can do that for you right now. Okay, so here's some success. We hear quite a bit, you know, that people have the perception that enforcement kind of has a correlation to public safety. But look at these numbers here. Measuring success through the number of citations issues or number of animal impounds doesn't measure the effect or the efficacy of an animal control program, what it has on the rabies control, public safety, animal welfare, or shelter life saving, right? Enforcement is simply one strategy to try to gain a resident's compliance with local codes or ordinances, right? It doesn't necessarily improve the animal's situation. It doesn't solve the root cause, and it certainly doesn't improve like your community relationships or public support, right? So there needs to be a balance of enforcement and engagement. And I like these numbers here because you can see when we moved away from the enforcement-based, punishment-based measures and quotas in Austin, and you can see how it was a piece of the pie, but look at the intake numbers that went down, and the number of animals that died in the shelter also went down. Okay, so we talked a little bit, mentioned about social media being a really great tool to engage your community. It's a great way to promote your partners as well if you work with a wildlife rescue, right? Look at this picture here, and I grabbed this minutes after it was going up, and it already had 277 likes, which in the grand scheme of things is not a whole lot, but the comments and the shares, and I should go back and really see how many people commented on this picture. But you know, people don't think of wildlife when they think of animal control. You know, they are still largely thinking of the dog catcher, and we need to change that. And we can control that by telling them, showing them the variety of work that we do. And this also, you can tag your rescue partners, right? So that gives them exposure and improves your relationship with them as well. Oh, this is just another thing. Are your officers going out to events, community events, but not as an official capacity or enforcement, just going out there and hanging out? This is actually, I believe it was a rabies drive, so free rabies vaccinations and food, and we had the low-cost spay neuter clinic out there. But have your officers go out to community meetings, you know, armed with data and information about that particular community, and have them engage and be available for questioning and all that. Okay, so we're talking about transparency, and I am so proud of this organization. This is the Animal Services Center of the Mesilla Valley, and they're out in Las Cruces. Every single day they're putting out these statistics, right? And looking at you guys can read through this, but really I would love to see it broken down even further and have it include field services. This organization is actually separate from their animal control. But if you are able to, you should be completely transparent and tell people where you are as far as numbers and capacity at your shelter, and what came in and what left, and all of the things. And people appreciate this because they can see exactly what is going on. It's scary at first, right? And people don't want to see how many animals died in your shelter, but it's important for them to know. And I always talk to officers who aren't based out of the shelter, or they're a contracted agency, or even in a separate building, right? There's a disconnect between what officers bring into the shelter and how that affects the shelter, because they're not based out of there. So I challenge you, as if you are an officer who is separate from a shelter, what do you do to stay connected with the shelters you work with? Like, do you know what's going on there? Do you ever walk through the kennels? Do you talk to the shelter workers? Is there any kind of cross training? Really trying to bridge that gap between field and shelter services, because we're really working towards the same thing. This is a cool picture. I really like this picture because it has it has officers in it. It has volunteers and behavior trainers, and there's a celebrity dog trainer and customer service staff. This is in Austin. We worked for the county jail it was dog training as offered as an inmate program, a skill program, and then they also branched out and housed kittens for us, which was great for the animals. It was great for the inmates, and really great for the shelter. And so we told everybody about it. We had the news out there. This was the press release day, and we went out there and just shouted it out, and the community loved it. Okay, zip code reload. I really like this. It is in Austin. We had certain pockets. We noticed a spike of a high intake, lower reclaim areas, right? And they were the similar pockets every single month. So what we did was we figured out who was coming in from where. Once their stray hold was up, we took them back to their community, right? We took our mobile adoption unit, that van that you can see there. It's really nice. And we had free adoptions back in that community. Kids came out, the ice cream, you can have the ice cream truck there, right? That noise will bring all the kids running. And who knows animals better than the kids, right? Kids were coming up and being like, oh, that's so-and-so's dog, or blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, go get them. Come get your dog, putting those dogs back into the community in which they came from. It's really important that you trust the community, and you engage with them, and you bring their animals back, because in different political climates, you don't know why people are avoiding the shelter, right? So if their animals are at the shelter and you basically know where they came from, it behooves you to take them back and see if you can return them to their owners, and if whether it's as a return to owner or an adoption. Okay, collaborating with different departments in your city. So this was a collaboration between the Austin Animal Center and Austin Police Department, and it's really cool. The officers are actually on a wait list to be, have their photo taken. They come in and they pick out an animal and they get their picture, and it's a calendar. It sells out, and I should have included cats and rabbits and all that, but these are the cutest ones I could find, and it's pretty cool. They enjoy it, and we enjoy it too. More collaboration. That is on the bottom there. That's the UT women's basketball team, and they are amazing, and they have a lot of followers. So we got them in there to do like a volunteer day, and some of them rode out with officers, and they were all, Snapchatting and tweeting and Facebooking it, and then their followers saw us because we were tagged in it. And that's just another way to engage with your community. Really just using their social media power, I guess, is for lack of a better term. And just, hey, we're here. Look who we're working with. They like it. You should come see us. Okay, so communicating your needs to the public. Apologies, that bottom that zoom in is a little pixelated, but you get the gist of it, right? So I live in Texas, and Texas loves fireworks, which I'm sure everywhere loves fireworks. But we realized, we looked at our intake, uh, after the 4th of July, after New Year's, after really any holiday here, but our stray intake just spiked, and we knew that people weren't going to stop, shooting fireworks. We knew that that wasn't going to happen. So what we did was that we approached all the fireworks stands, the employees, the owners, whoever was there, and we developed relationships with them and asked them, hey, can we put this on your stand? It's not discouraging people to buy fireworks. It's just informing them, look, fireworks scare pets. I mean, they scare people too. So think about it. Maybe secure your animal before you shoot those fireworks. And it worked. And it developed relationships with the community, because they kept seeing us out there with the fireworks posters, and it was bilingual. And the fireworks guys loved it, because it would spark conversations and they could talk about it, right? They felt like they were doing a service, which is very important, because they really were. Elaborating on communicating your needs. Same thing. That's another example of I think that was after New Year's, one on the left there. And then, do you know how many animals, as an officer, how many animals are at your shelter, and what is capacity? And are you communicating that out in the public, right? You're talking to people all day long. And in Austin this summer, they had a space crisis. Animals needed to get out of the shelters. So Austin Animal Center, Austin Humane Society, and Austin Pets Alive did a collaboration where it was a mass public press release that 500 animals needed to leave the shelters combined, and they did a free adoptions day across all 3 shelters. But the officers were driving around telling everybody about this too, and they had flyers and everything, handing it out. What I'm getting at is like the connection between your shelter and field services. We're the same. We should be promoting each other. We should be collaborating with other shelters, and we should be the resources for the latest and greatest. I mean, we're the experts on animal services, and we're out in the community every single day. And often, we are the only time. Sometimes people, the only encounter they have with animal services is with their officers. So you might as well make it a good experience and help get some animals home. All right, so let's move on to community cat conflict mitigation. This is a pretty common topic amongst the officers that I work with across the country. Whether or not you have a return to field program, a TNR program, an SNR program, whatever you're calling it, if you have cats, whether or not they're spayed or neutered, you're going to run into this type of call, right? Neighbors who live next to each other, one neighbor feeds the cats, one neighbor doesn't, right? So one place is a safe haven, the other one, they're not welcome. And there are ways for us to engage with the public, with the communities, and to let them know, inform them on the humane ways to deter cats. Like, you don't have to have cats on your property. But with that, we also need to tell them the benefits of having that spayed and neutered community cat colony and how to live with them, because they're going to be there, right? So when I explain deterrence to people, I like to describe them in 3 different categories, and they're up here on your screen. So ultrasonic and electronic, retail products, and home remedies, right? There are multiple types in each categories. We'll go over them briefly in a sec, and we'll go over how well they work. Each one of them works, and for what certain situation, and how they're challenging in others. Okay, here's some pictures, right? The top left, most of the stuff is pretty inexpensive. You can get that from a Home Depot, any office supply store, and those are kind of fancy, but you can also cut up at the bottom of your screen. There's those old office mats. Those can be used too, and that's for situations where people are maybe they have a dog or dogs, you know, that are redirecting on each other because a cat is walking along that fence line to get to the feeding station or wherever it's going, right? So cats really, in understanding cat behavior, they're never really going to jump over a solid wall or over a solid fence. They're always going to want to jump up top so they can assess what's on the other side for safety, right? So if you make up top uncomfortable for them, you're not going to hurt them, but they're not going to want to be up there. So that's a great way to mitigate that kind of thing when people are upset about cats causing problems with their animals, like dogs redirecting, right? There are ones that are scent-based, like Critter Ritter, and of course, you know, they're more expensive than those Home Depot solutions, and they just serve a different purpose, right? For like flower beds or whatever you want, scent-based. So if it does rain, you have to reapply, and you have to do that kind of often. The ultrasonic ones, those are my favorites because they are usually solar powered. They're a little more expensive, and I think Amazon it's like 40 or 50 bucks, but they work. You know, we have a high success rate with them. And then there's the spray one as well at the bottom right. It's the sprinkler system. It'll work on the neighbor kids as well. Just kidding. But it's imperative that you use these correctly. And we do have another presentation solely dedicated to community cat conflict mitigation. And you can check that out as well on our website. Okay. So community presence beyond traditional duties, right? Being proactive versus reactive, right? All of these things that listed up there, try them out. You know, maybe your agency hasn't always let your officers go to community meetings, events, fairs. Let them go. Let them go. Let them know what's going on in that community. Let them engage. Get on the agenda if you want to present, but otherwise just go and hang out, talk to people, right? Work with a nonprofit if you don't have a friends of, if you're municipal, if you don't have a friends of, work with a nonprofit arm where you can fundraise and you can maybe get medical vouchers or fencing assistance, all these different things that you can try. If you don't want to do it all, do one by one, and if it doesn't work, you try something else, right? That's the name of the game here. Just keep evolving and being flexible and trying to save as many animals as possible with limited resources. You know, simple thing right at the bottom there. When your officers are out there, sometimes, you know, we pack our lunches. Sometimes we're going to local businesses. Instead of going through the drive-through, get out, talk to them, talk to people. You're in uniform. Make it a positive experience and chat to them. See what they have going on. Do they have community cats? Are they feeding them? You know, what is the issues as far as animals go in their neighborhood? Okay, I'm going to put all these up here as I chat. Okay, yeah. Going back to being proactive and not reactive, like stop simply clearing those calls and start looking for long-term solutions. All right, there's a story, maybe it's called an analogy, I could be wrong, but there's a story that goes that people were walking next to a river and they saw a puppy floating down the river and they're like, oh my goodness, we got to get in the water, we got to save that puppy. So they waded in the water and they grabbed the puppy, right? And then as they grabbed the puppy, they saw another puppy coming down the river. So they were like, oh my goodness, more puppies. And they called more people, and eventually they started a whole human chain where they were just taking these puppies out of the river, taking the puppies and kind of like passing them on, putting them on the shore. And eventually someone said, hey, how about one of us go up the river to figure out where these puppies are coming from? And I think that it hit home with me for animal sheltering, because we are so inundated with work every single day. Animal control officers are out there just working, but we don't make time to figure out long-term solutions of what is actually going to be proactive versus reactive. So think about that. Okay, So this is Ann Richards. She was, if you think that your community is not ready for whatever program you are about to pilot or propose, think about Ann Richards, who was the governor of Texas in the 90s, right? Texas was ready for a woman governor in the 90s. So your community is ready for whatever you have to propose. And she had a saying that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? If you are not engaging with people, if you're not talking to your community, you are, I am sure they're talking about you, right? So you might as well tell them facts versus letting people tell themselves stories and perpetuating misinformation. We're talking about resources. You know, when you're out there in the field, have all your resources printed with you in Spanish and English, right? Have it to leave with people. Provide your contact information. Take their information. Take the complainant, the patron's contact information, and forward it along. If you have specific staff for specific programs, forward that along. But have something to leave with them that they can contact your department later. Sometimes, when it's not a particularly happy situation, maybe someone is not receptive to hearing what you have to say. You know, maybe they need a minute to think about it and they'll give you a call back. But if they don't have that information, then they wouldn't be able to do that. And then you'd be cutting off, you know, a relationship building opportunity. Volunteers, volunteers, volunteers. Empower and enable your volunteers and always say thank you, right? They are your community. They're out there and they're going to be your biggest advocates, right? They're going to talk to other volunteers. They're going to talk to their family members, their community, and let them know how they can help you. All right, resources. All right, there's National Animal Control Care and Control Association, right? NACA. Are you members? It's an incredible resource. They have incredible training opportunities. Every single week, I feel like I'm getting a new online training from them. It's pretty cool. They have a great newsletter magazine as well. So join NACA. I believe they have their conference is coming up next month as well. But they do have an annual conference, so check out their website, become a member. You can either be an individual member or an agency can join as well. And then even on a statewide level, there are a lot of state animal control associations. So here in Texas, we have the Texas Animal Control Association. So check those out, and those are just resources for you to be aware that, you know, you might be working in a particular jurisdiction, but there are other people out there who are going through the same things, and it's a great resource for you. Oh, tagging into resources, and I have to give a shout out to my volunteer community cat trappers in Austin. We had a really great group of people who were out there doing TNR every single day. So this was a program where the cats didn't actually come into the shelter. It was completely mitigated through a TNR program, so not SNR or not RTF, but they have been doing TNR for years and years and years before there were any official programs. You know, they were taking these cats to their vets, paying out of pocket, putting them back. So we created a program at the city shelter in Austin Animal Services and asked them how we could make it easier for them to do this incredible work that the shelter really needed, right? And they said, well, it's really tough. You know, Austin is expanding so much. Traffic is terrible. Not only is it hard for us to make an appointment at the public community cat clinic, right? So we have to travel like an hour and a half in rush hour to get these animals there on time. Is there any way we could have a central location to where we're, you know, in the areas we're actually trapping for a pre and post surgery? So we can like a drop off and pickup points. And so we created this mobile mini. We got this mobile mini. It's that's actually just the name of the company. Some of them refer to it as the Catty Shack or the Cat Box, which is kind of cringy, but also pretty amazing. But it's climate controlled, and they were able to drop off cats there 4 days a week. And of course, there's guidelines and SOPs. But so they would drop them off there, and then our partners in this community cat program, Austin Humane Society, would come pick them up, perform the surgeries, keep them at Austin Humane Society overnight, and return them the next day to this mobile mini where our community cat trappers, our volunteers, could pick them back up and release them. But if we hadn't had that conversation, a lot of them were just getting burnt out, right? They were spending their money, their time, their patience, really trying to get all these animals spayed and neutered when Austin was expanding, when it made it harder for them. We had the conversation with them and we came up with this, and to this day, I think they are doing, I'm a volunteer in that program now, but they do, I say we because I'm a volunteer, but up to 150 spay and neuters every single month, which is great. Just run on volunteers. So I have to give a shout out to that because in the past, the cat trappers were kind of hiding from animal control. It wasn't a celebrated program. It wasn't a measure of success, but they were out there saving animals' lives, and they're very important. All right, a really great resource for you guys. This is our Humane Animal Control Manual. It really covers all aspects of shelter operations too, but it's a roadmap for progressive community-based animal care and control. It's a collection of descriptions of our country's most successful life-saving programs, and the people who created those programs and who are running those programs, they're the ones who wrote the chapters, right? You can break it up into chapters, or you can download the entire thing. You don't have to download it. You can just read it online as well. Check it out. It's great. And the website's up top there. It's also on our main website, so you'll be able to find it regardless. Oh, a plug for our national conference next year. It's in Orlando, June 17th through 20th. It's going to be great. Check it out, and please join us. And this is my contact information. If you need anything, if you're looking for resources, information, if you just want to chat about something, please reach out. I'm available to you guys, and thank you for your time.